Welcome back. So let's continue. The fifth question on an activity of daily living form that I think contains traps is the questions about meals. Do you prepare or serve meals? Yes or no? If so, what meals do you make? Well, what on earth does any of that have to do with your ability to work? I think it's I'm going to use a legal term, bullshit question. Now, let me ask breakfast. What do you do? How many days a month do you make breakfast? How about lunch? How about dinner? Now, again, I don't think this has anything to do with your ability to work. But again, we're talking about ranges. Breakfast could be putting a Pop-Tart in a toaster. It could be making scrambled eggs. It could be serving Christmas Day dinner, breakfast rather. So again, this is a whole range of activity regarding breakfast, lunch, and dinner. So again, use estimates. Do you have to stand? Do you have to sit? Do you have to alternate positions? Do you have to use a microwave? Does your spouse or partner make your lunch and leave it for you? Is dinner takeout? Who goes and gets the takeout? That sort of thing. If you're alleging you have a hand injury, I certainly wouldn't want to see information about you chopping vegetables up because that requires you to use your hand. Or if you're alleging a back injury, I don't want to hear that you're standing at the stove for 30, 45 minutes to an hour making something. So think about what your medical condition is and your restrictions and limitations and work backwards in answering that question. Number 6, caring for the place you live. In other words, household activities. So what things do you do? Describe the home care activities you do regularly. Things that you do for other people, like your spouse, children, or neighbors. Things that just don't get done. And things that you did before that you don't do anymore. Again, what on earth does this have to do with your claim? I don't think it does anything except for to create inconsistencies. So what do you do regularly? I hope that you're not vacuuming. I hope you're not dusting. I hope that you are not doing spring house cleaning, that sort of thing. You may, do a little wiping around on the counter, but we really don't want to hear you doing everything else that I've just described, or even more. Things that you do for others. Now, look, we've got kids. We got to take care of kids. And so one of the things that they're always interested in is, what are your children's school? What are your children's activities? Are you attending them? Because that's fair game for surveillance. Now, I'm not suggesting that you don't do any of this, but I think that you need to make sure that you understand at some point you may be under surveillance. So we don't want to see you, racing around, taking your kids here and there and attending this or that. And allege that you're unable to work, because all that activity requires sitting, driving, standing, and any of that can be inconsistent with your restrictions and limitations. So use your common sense. I'm not telling you not to do these things. I'm just telling you to do them within your limits. Take breaks, sit down. So if they got film of you, they see you taking the breaks that you claim that you need. Things that can't get done around the house, well, again, I told you what I hope you're not doing, and I certainly hope that you're not doing yard work. I certainly hope that you're not out there building a flower garden. I hope that you're not out there, changing the oil in your car. Any of that activity can be inconsistent with your restrictions and limitations as you describe them to your doctor or what your doctor says. So think about that. Things that you did before that you don't do now. Another dumb question. But what they're looking for is for you to say, hey, I used to golf before and now I don't golf. And then they get a picture of you golfing. So again, I like the good days, bad days. I don't do any of this, but on a good day, if I feel like I can, I might try this, but I pay for it the next day. All right. Number 7, now we're getting down to business. Work-related activities. Do you have any serious difficulty doing any of the following on a sustained basis? Now there's 2 weasel words here. What on earth is serious difficulty? And what is a sustained basis? I have no clue. So they're asking you to rate what it is you can do, and then again, looking for inconsistencies. So one of the questions is sitting. If you have to alternate sitting and standing, Then tell them you have to alternate sitting and standing within a range, depending on how you feel. Walking, same way. Now, you have a dog? Great. The dog needs to be walked? I wouldn't necessarily be walking that dog for any distance. And if it's a big dog, I sure as heck would not be picking up that dog. Preferably, you can open the back door and let Fido out and do his business. Or have somebody else walk your dog. Crouching and squatting. Well, when you go to the grocery store, what do you do to get things off the bottom shelf? You crouch and you squat. So don't say that you don't do it, because they may have a picture of you in the grocery store doing it. Just say that you can do it with difficulty and you try to limit it. Same way with things like lifting. Now look, if you've got a young child and your child falls down, you're going to pick that child up regardless of your restrictions and limitations and your pain. So if you do have kids, you want to explain that, you do what you need to do. And in the case of an emergency, you'll deal with your child. One of the other questions is remembering. Well, if you have problems with fatigue or memory issues, you might make lists. You might lose your lists. So those are the kinds of things or examples of how I think you should answer that question. Pushing and pulling with your hands. Well, that involves bilateral manual dexterity, and that's really important in sedentary jobs. So if you say, I can't keyboard, but you're out there with something using your hands repetitively, that's going to contradict what it is you said that you could or couldn't do. Reaching up, reaching down, reaching out in front of you, all of those range of motion issues. Again, we don't want to see a picture of you at Costco loading a case of sodas or more into the back of your trunk because you've got your arms out in front of you, you're lifting, you're bending. All those activities can be construed by the disability company as something that indicates that you're capable of working. Another question might be traveling. Do you have difficulty traveling or driving? Well, look, if you're going to go take a vacation after things calm down in the world, don't necessarily tell your doctor that you're out on an airplane or that you've taken a road trip. That, again, indicates that you have some capacity that's greater than what your doctor has opined. If asked, certainly tell the truth, but that's something I don't necessarily volunteer. How far do you drive? Well, you may drive to the grocery store, you may drive to the your doctor's office, the gas station. Good days, bad days need to be explained. I hope that you're not driving an hour or more anywhere, because again, unless you're in the back seat flat or somebody else is driving and you're stopping, getting out and moving around, that can be an issue. Another one might be problems with working productively. In other words, can you work productively and maintain the pace and concentration that's required and meet the production requirements that are required? I think you need to work backwards. Think about what your material and substantial duties are of your occupation. Think about what you can't do physically, behaviorally, or cognitively, and make sure you cover those things in the context of these questions. But again, in a range, good days, bad days. Now, you need to, I think, also emphasize the difference in what you do now and what your occupation requires, particularly your need for breaks, any non-exertional issues such as changing position frequently, taking naps, elevating your legs, those sorts of things that can erode and eliminate your ability to meet the pace and production requirements of your occupation. Now, I've mentioned the word surveillance a lot. I don't want you to be paranoid, but I do need you to understand that surveillance is one of the tools that disability carriers will use if they think there's inconsistencies. And I will tell you right off, if you are a Hartford policyholder, Hartford Liberty Life, you can expect that you will have surveillance on your case, particularly at the time when the definition of disability changes from an inability to do your own occupation to an inability to do any occupation. And of course, I'm going to talk more about surveillance in later episodes of this podcast. Well, that's a wrap. In this next episode, I'm going to talk about one of the deadliest events that can happen in a disability insurance claim, the field interview. That's letting the monster into your house. So look, if you like this podcast, consider liking this page, leaving a review, or sharing it with your friends and family. Remember, this podcast comes out weekly, so stay tuned next week for another insightful episode of Winning Isn't Easy. Thanks.